Okay, let's dive in and start with the basics and fundamentals of understanding dementia and Alzheimer's disease. These terms are often used interchangeably, however, they do have very different meanings. So let's start there. Dementia versus Alzheimer's. What is dementia? Well, dementia is not a disease. Rather, it is a group of symptoms that affect two or more areas of daily living. So when we think of and we hear of symptoms when we talk about dementia, we often hear memory loss. That's the big one that we hear, right? But there's also things like confusion and language difficulties, the inability to perform familiar tasks, or difficulty with abstract thinking, or just basic decision making. The misplacing of belongings is a big one. Rapid mood swings, or just changes in personality and behavior in general. These are all terms and symptoms that we hear when we talk about dementia. So dementia is also not a normal part of aging. And there are reversible and irreversible forms of dementia. So when we're talking about reversible or temporary forms of dementia, these may be caused by brain tumors or depression or even dehydration. Side effects of some medications can cause temporary dementia, substance abuse, malnutrition, and nutritional deficiencies. These can all cause temporary and what we call reversible dementia. Now, when we're talking about irreversible, we're talking about Lewy body and vascular dementia, Huntington disease, Parkinson's, Pick's disease, and of course, the most common form of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, which does represent about 60 to 80% of all dementia cases. So what is Alzheimer's disease? Well, we just said it is an irreversible disease. It is a progressive neurological brain disease that is characterized by plaques and tangles on the brain. Alzheimer's usually begins when a person is in their mid-60s. However, there are more and more cases with people in their 30s and 40s, and even as early as the age of 27 being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's starts in the hippocampus, which is responsible for forming new memories and is also responsible for learning. It then moves on to the cerebral cortex, which is responsible for high-level brain functions, and then eventually moves on to the brainstem that controls breathing and other body functions. The lifespan of Alzheimer's disease is roughly 7 to 20 years, and it is a terminal disease, and as we all know, there is no cure for Alzheimer's. So let's look at some statistics for Alzheimer's. First of all, there are more than 5.8 million Americans currently affected, and of those 5.8 million, 3.2 million of them are women. So women are definitely at the epicenter of this disease. It is now said that 1 in 6 women over the age of 65 are likely to get Alzheimer's disease, which almost doubles a man's chance, which is 1 in 11. Women are also 2 times more likely to get Alzheimer's disease than breast cancer, which is terrifying. 1 in 3 seniors die with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. It is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S., and it also kills more than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. And like many of you, over 16 million unpaid caregivers with over 18.6 billion hours of care, and that equals $224 billion. And right now, 50% of primary care physicians believe that the medical profession is not ready for the growing number of people with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. And by 2050, it's estimated there could be 14 million Americans diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So let's talk about the stages of Alzheimer's. So we're going to look at 2 different systems today. So the first one being the one that's used by the Alzheimer's Association. This is the one that most people are familiar with. It breaks it down into 3 stages: mild, moderate, and severe. And the second one is a more comprehensive 7-stage breakdown that we will also discuss. So let's first dive into the 3 stages. First stage being mild or early. What we often see here is problems coming up with the right word or name, losing or misplacing items, organizing and planning becomes difficult. Now, this was a big one in my experience with my mom. She had early onset Alzheimer's, and this was one of the first things we noticed about her that made us kind of stand up and take notice and start to think about getting her in to get an assessment. So we were on a trip, she and I, in France, and one day I was walking by her bathroom when she was putting on some makeup, and I noticed that she was staring at her makeup case and her makeup brushes and her foundation and eyeshadows with kind of a loss. And I took a step back and observed her for a few minutes, and it took about a good minute, maybe minute and a half or longer, for her to start actually using her brushes and attempting to put makeup on, and she struggled. So I walked away and let her do her thing, and she came out about an hour and a half or so later, which was quite a long time for her to actually spend time putting makeup on. It would usually take her like 20 minutes max. And I could tell in her face that she was frustrated and disappointed with something, but she didn't want to tell me about it, and I didn't ask. So I observed her the rest of the trip and really started noticing that she had a lot of trouble with organizing her day. And then when we got back from this trip, this is the time we actually took steps to get her into a neurologist to see what was going on. So we'll also see in this stage that people are often unwilling to adapt to change. So the next stage being moderate or middle stage. So here we see confusion about time and place. So not knowing what day it is, not knowing what time it is or day of the week. Dressing appropriately. Now this is dressing appropriately mainly for weather conditions. And this was a big one with my mom as well. She had a hard time understanding what to put on for a given day. So her temperature sensitivity was off a bit. So she would put on several layers of sweaters when it was 90 degrees out, or wear basically nothing, or short sleeves when it was, 20 below zero. So she needed a lot of guidance in picking out clothing that was appropriate for a given day or weather situation. Now we also see difficulty with recalling recent events. Now this could be something as simple as remembering what they had for breakfast that day. And also personality changes start to happen during this stage. The third stage is severe late. So here, your loved one's going to need regular assistance with activities of daily living and personal care. So things like toileting and bathing and dressing, they're going to need regular assistance with this on a daily basis. More difficulty communicating, and changes in physical abilities, the ability to walk, hold their head up, talk, things like that. And unable to recognize family and friends at this stage. So now let's look at the 7 stages. So this was created by Dr. Barry Riceberg. So this is definitely a more detailed, comprehensive look. We'll take a quick snapshot here. So this is broken down by no impairment, very mild, mild decline, moderate, severe, severe, and very severe. So this will be available to you as a download at the end of this lesson. So you can download it and print it and have it for your reference to look at, regularly, or you can keep it on your computer to refer back to. This is a really great tool as you're moving through your journey with Alzheimer's with your loved one. One thing that we need to keep in mind and embrace is that dementia is the deterioration of the brain entirely. It's not just memory loss. And when we hear and we talk about Alzheimer's and dementia, it's always most often referred back to memory loss, but it's so much more than that. It's really the brain dying. It's going to affect communication and language, and it will affect the ability to process and control emotions. It will affect the ability to interpret thirst, hunger, pain, and other physical sensations, just like I was referring to earlier with my mom and her temperature sensitivity. That's a big one. It may affect the ability to swallow down the line, and eventually it will affect the ability to breathe. Every journey is different. Every experience with dementia is different, and your loved one will be unique as well. While some people may show all of these symptoms that I talked about, others may only exhibit some of them, but to a greater extent. And there are some social factors that may impact how your loved one moves through their Alzheimer's journey. So things like age. We often find that younger people and younger onset, they have a more difficult time. And that's mainly because they're healthy otherwise, right? But their brain is shutting down. So they definitely struggle a bit more, and they tend to fight the disease pretty hard. So cultural and generational differences. So some cultures may be more receptive or less receptive to care. And for example, older generations might be more sensitive to privacy and modesty. So we need to keep that in mind as we're caregiving for our loved ones. Environment. Whether your loved one is in a facility or in their home or in a familiar home, that will definitely have an impact on how they transition and how their general temperament was as a whole. So were they an easygoing person? Were they an introvert? Were they an extrovert? Were they an aggressive person? And also other potential psychological challenges that they had in life, whether they were depressed or anxious or had schizophrenia. These are all ingredients in the soup on how your loved one will respond to the disease. And we do tend to find that assertive personalities or type A personalities or people that might have had highly functioning jobs may have a more difficult journey with Alzheimer's as well. We need to be mindful of these differences in our approach to care. So what does this mean? It means we need to tailor our caregiving approach to our person and our circumstances. So this means we must engage and care for our loved one in a way that honors who they are as a person. So who they are now and who they were before. This will be a big part of the next lesson as we discuss on how to focus on caring for our loved one with their unique spirit in mind rather than focusing on the disease. So let's dive into the next lesson and learn all about that.